Greetings, brothers and sisters. Biden refuses to say if he knew Colonial Pipeline paid hackers $4 to $5 million to get pipeline back online. JoJo not admitting that the pipeline paid a ransom to the hacker group, the Dark Side. Colonial Pipeline did pay ransom to hackers, sources now say. This is really messed up. We're going to come back to this. But it's, think about what this means.
Here's what you can do, the drivers. Don't panic, number one. I know seeing lines at the pumps or gas stations with no gas can be extremely stressful.
You guys notice how JoJo's eyes are open less and less? Like he's turning into Mr. Magoo. Like his eyes are like, his eyelids don't raise up high enough anymore. He can barely see. By the end of his presidency, he'll be like some sort of little mole man like Mr. Magoo. His eyes won't open at all.
Armand's Men's Shop. The last refuge for men of good taste. Yeah. Now then, sir, what do you have in navy blue? Well, of all the brass. You win, sir. I like a young man with ambition, confidence in his product. Yes, sir.
But this is a temporary situation. Do not get more gas than you need in the next few days. As I said, we expect the situation to begin to improve by the weekend and into early next week, and gasoline supply is coming back online, and panic buying will only slow the process.
So where do you stand on filling trash bags full of gas? Like, where do you stand on that? Asking for a friend.
And I also want to say something to the gas stations. Do not, I repeat, do not try to take advantage of consumers during this time.
You can't even catch the hackers, bro. He's threatening people, don't gouge prices because we're watching you. Yeah, why don't you catch some hackers, right? Like when you catch the hackers, then you can start threatening other people. The long arm of the law.
I'm going to work with governors in the affected states to put a stop to price gouging wherever it arises. And I'm asking our federal agencies to stand ready to provide assistance to state-level efforts to monitor and address any price gouging at the pump. Nobody should be using this situation for financial gain. That's what the hackers are trying to do.
Well, first of all, he's talking about the hackers like they're some formidable enemies. That's what those hackers are, those mean hackers, like they're some supervillain, right? And they are receiving financial gain, JoJo. They got paid off $4 or $5 million, right? Which you won't admit to. Like, it's a disaster. And that, financial gain is part of these things. Like, price gouging is part of it. It's a matter of supply and demand.
That's what they're about, not us. That's not who we are.
Wait, we're not hackers? I thought we were hackers. We're not hackers, JoJo? I think you're a hacker, JoJo. JoJo, I think you're underestimating. I think deep down you're a hacker.
And as for the people who carried out this attack, the FBI has released details on the attack so others can take steps to prevent from being victimized like Colonial has been. We do not believe, I emphasize, we do not believe the Russian government was involved in this attack. But we do have strong reason to believe that the criminals who did the attack are living in Russia.
You better show some proof of this, not like that bogus NSA report on the election, the election of 2016. Like, not something like that. We believe with moderate confidence, with high confidence, right? You better provide some evidence that this is Russian hackers. Because, this is like a World War III type of thing. And so I'll get into that more in a moment. But just think what he's saying here, right? Like, we believe, we have a lot of reasons to believe that it's the Russians, some Russian people are involved. Really, you show some evidence, bro, right? Like, you guys better be able to catch these guys, or you're going to appear weak as S.
That's where it came from. We're from Russia. We have been in direct communications with Moscow about the imperative for responsible countries to take decisive action against these ransomware networks. And we're also going to pursue a measure to disrupt their ability to operate.
you're going to disrupt their ability to operate. That's your strong response here. You're going to disrupt, like, what are you going to have people like booing, right? Throwing pies at them, like, we're going to make it hard for those guys to hack us again. You know, it's not going to be so easy next time. We're going to disrupt them.
And our Justice Department has launched a new task force dedicated to prosecuting ransomware hackers to the full extent of the law. And finally, let me say that this event is providing an urgent reminder of why we need to harden our infrastructure and make it more resilient against all threats, natural and man-made.
Well, Magoo, your infrastructure bill really didn't have very much to do with infrastructure and had nothing to do with hackers, right? And so this has nothing to do with infrastructure because this was hackers, at least according to your official story. But in equally disturbing news, official warns people not to fill plastic bags with gasoline amid panic over gas. So these are two very disturbing reports, like new things. These are breaking new grounds, pipelines paying off hackers, people filling plastic bags with gasoline. There's some pictures here somewhere. It's all over the place. Here, some guy posted this on Twitter. He's got like these clear, thin plastic bags. These aren't even like, you know, heavy duty leaf bags, right? These are, you know, the thinnest possible plastic bags. And how are they going to get the gas out of that? It's just going to spill all over the place. The guy's got enough, you know, like, imagine if he got rear-ended here. This is what we're dealing with. People want to, you know, bash the controllers all the time, the so-called elite, but this is what they're dealing with. People putting gas in plastic bags, and the U.S. government having to say, you know, don't put gas in plastic bags. And stupidity aside, and this is stupid. I mean, what do you think those? What do they think they hold? 10 gallons? I mean, that seems like bigger than a 5-gallon gas tank. So it seems like about twice as much gas in each bag. Seems like he has about 8 bags. So he's got about 80 gallons of gas in the back of his minivan. In clear plastic bags. Completely ready for the apocalypse. This is a guy that's starring in the apocalypse. And so the stupidity aside, think about this, because my son was telling me about this like maybe a year ago or so. He knows more about this type of stuff than I do. That there are all these computer hacker groups that hack into big corporations, that hack into, you know, Fortune 500 companies, and they get paid huge amounts of money in ransom. In fact, sometimes they just pay some of these groups off so they leave them alone. It's like the cost of doing business. So think about what that means. If this is true, if this group called the dark side, which is not going to be caught, like Joe Biden, the reason why he doesn't want to admit to it, because, you know, that means that these hacker groups can hack into the computers of one of the most important pipelines in America and literally shut it down. And their only recourse is to pay them off. So if they can do that, well, what's stopping China from doing that? What's stopping, you know, Russia or any enemy, you know, any of the U.S. enemies from doing that? And I was remembering from the Snowden movie that Snowden had revealed, or one of the other characters in the movies was explained to him that they could hack into any, you know, power system, any electrical system in any country and shut it down anytime they want. That America had the ability to shut down anybody's power grid. Which means, you know, they probably have the same, because it seems like they can't stop hacking. At least that's the official story here. So that means you could fight a war with no army. You could literally just shut down the electrical grid in the country. You could shut down these pipelines. I mean, think of the way people are reacting. They're hoarding toilet paper and they're putting gas in plastic bags in the back of their car. You know? Out of fear. I mean, that's how quickly people devolve into stupidity. We've seen it already. And so you could stop the food supply, you could stop the electricity, you could stop water. I mean, you could do all of these things in big major cities in any country and just, fight a war that way. You wouldn't even you could just have a war of hackers, and the country would devolve from inside. There would be riots, people would be at each other's throats. I mean, you could destroy countries by destroying their services. I mean, that's the way, they started to bomb rail stations and roads and power companies and things like this. That's one of the ways they cripple the country's infrastructure, and now you can do that with just a keyboard. So if this is, the official story is true, that this group of hackers, which can't be caught, they're completely anonymous, right? They're beyond the reach of the federal government. They're beyond the reach of the NSA. I mean, that's what they're saying. They couldn't arrest these guys. They couldn't do anything about it. Like Joe Biden, right? He's got to come out and say, America's weak as crap, right? Like that's what the reality here, that you can do pretty much any cybercrime and get away with it. They're not even, investigating cybercrime because it's so vast. And these groups can hack into, something as important as a gasoline pipeline and create panic across the East Coast and various other places. And they got to pay them like a fortune just to restore services. So that means that's how vulnerable that pipeline was. And I'm sure there's a lot of other things that are just as vulnerable. So if this story is true, again, there's no way to say, but there's nothing good here. Like if the government did this to prepare people for, a time where you won't be able to get gas. Because in other countries, when I lived in India, the electricity would go out like once a month. They had like on Sunday they would shut it off once a month, it was scheduled shut off. Everybody knew about it. It would go off for like 8 hours. If it was hot out and you needed air conditioning, you were kind of screwed. Like you just had to get through it. And some days it was so hot that, not having the air conditioning on, you could definitely, it was uncomfortable. But then it would go out maybe, as many as 5 or 10 times a month, just depending on what was going on. This is common around the world, that people don't have the kind of consistent services that we have. There was one of the Indian trainers for the Heartfulness System that I do used to come over our house. He came from Washington, D.C. He was living in America, but he grew up in a rural farm in India, and they would wake up at 2 in the morning because they would have electricity between 2 and 4. And they have these big water tanks on top of their houses, so they have to turn the well pump on and fill the water tank. So they have to get up and do everything that they needed to do with the limited amount of electricity they had for 2 hours in the middle of the night, right? And so Americans are completely, that's foreign to them, like in terms of not being able to do the things you like to do. And this COVID shutdown and the masks and, now the electricity, they're preparing Americans for a change in our lifestyle. I mean, look at what happened in Texas with that, that deep freeze and all the things that happened with that, bizarre storm that came out of nowhere. And again, whether this is being done intentionally by the controllers or not, this is going to happen one way or another. Like this, when we were in India for the flood, it was just torrential rains. I told this story very recently. And so it had rained more in the typhoon season than it had in years. And they had a dam that they eventually just opened up and just opened the floodgates without warning anybody. They opened it like 5 in the morning or something crazy like that when people were sleeping. But a week before that, my kids and I went to the mall and went to the movies. And we were coming home in the cab, and there was a river running down this road, like a big major sort of, like a Main Street boulevard, with these, big major streets. And there was just 2 lanes. There was 4 lanes of water just gushing down this road. It was about 1.5 feet to 2 feet deep, and we all just had to sit there and wait until the water drained out of the road. It took about 2 to 4 hours. So we left the mall at around 7 o'clock, and we didn't get home till 2 in the morning. And I looked at my kids because the electricity had already gone out 3 or 4 times during the past couple of weeks from the torrential rains. I said, tomorrow we're going out and we're stocking up on everything, water, just from my, whatever training and consciousness of doing prepper things. And so my kids, we had to walk to the store. They had these little stores, little grocery stores, and we all went out. We walked down, different times and, maybe multiple times, and we got all the things we needed. And then a week later, the flood happened, and we were more prepared than other people. There was a guy, I said, in the house across the street. We lived in like a little apartment, a flat. And this guy lived in a beautiful house, his family in this beautiful house, like it would be a multi-million-dollar house in America. And he ran out of food. The family ran out of food almost immediately. And my neighbors were throwing him chapatis, like tortillas, right, in a plastic bag, like, across and with the water for like trying to go from rooftop to rooftop because they had no food. They weren't prepared at all. There are people like that who go out and shop every day and, without any servants, when people who cook for them and things, they're completely helpless. They have no idea how to survive. And so whether it's the controllers or whether it's God or a combination of the two, we're being warned right now. Like we're seeing the writing on the wall that, the dollar's being devalued. They're dumping their money. They're dumping the dollar into hard assets. We see that, the stuff with COVID, the, the devaluation of the dollar, all these things. I mean, it's just coming around the corner. Like there's no stopping this, right? We can all see it. Like it's something that's been, hanging out there for a while. And so it's time to prepare in one way or another. Everyone should think about this, right? How are you going to prepare? What do you need? Because everyone's needs are going to be different depending on where you are. But everyone needs food and water to start off with. And so these are things, never hurts to have some, storage of these types of things. But people are driving around with, 80 to 100 gallons of gas in plastic bags in the back of their car. JoJo can't even admit that a ransom was paid, if that, And there's no good story of why the pipeline was shut down. If it was hackers, that's a horrible story. If the government, that's a horrible story. If it was a foreign government, that's an act of war. That's a horrible story. I mean, there's nothing good about this. There's nothing, that bodes well for the system. Like I always say, spirituality, connecting to God, because there's going to be a transformation. The system's collapsing, and for people to survive, they're going to have to internalize their relationship with God, the heartfulness system that I always talk about. And so, it's coming around the corner. I got more to say about this. I'll talk about it in a longer video. It's kind of late. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely pouring from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.